I am talking to Corey Legge, who is an artist from New South Wales who's just released his third album called What Now? Corey, great to see you. Great to hear from
You
you.
too, David. Thanks for having me.
An absolute pleasure because I'm a fan of your music and was very pleased to see you already had a third album out. It felt like the last album wasn't that long ago. As I said, the third album is called What Now? And you conceived of this, I was reading, as a concept album around the 2019-2020 bushfires and COVID. So I'm sort of plunging you in at the deep end with the first question and asking you to talk about the structure of the album, how you conceived of it that way.
Yeah, so I guess having seen the effects of the Black Summer bushfires in the Bega Valley where I grew up, it was something that strongly impacted me and those around me. So I thought it was something that I would be able to write about from experience and to ask people that I knew personally that had gone through the fires about their experiences and to put those into lyrics. So there's quite a few references to local towns in the Bega Valley. There's references to Cabargo, where my brother was on the main street as the fire hit the town. So yeah, there's songs about his perspectives and my perspectives and even complete strangers that I talked to at the Cabargo pub directly after the fire. So yeah, it's sort of, for me, it's a way to document the times and to share those experiences with the general public as well.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting project to sort of look at it dispassionately because as a storyteller, which you are, writing songs, I can see the interest in wanting to go in and document those stories, but at the same time it is so personal to you. Did it feel arduous collecting all of those stories?
Yes and no. I think the first 5 songs came really quickly. It was I just found that after the fires, it was a way for me to get a lot of emotions off my chest, and yeah, the songs just flowed really quickly, and it became apparent once I had those first few that I could sort of expand that into a concept album. And then I guess it was just a case of filling in the missing pieces there with the last few songs. I guess just before I started recording, it was going into the COVID lockdowns, and I wanted to include people's experiences of COVID on there as well. And as it turned out, we had to record the album in the middle of the lockdown in Greater Sydney. So we actually lost 2 band members that were meant to play on the album. They couldn't actually get up to Sydney, so we had to record with different people than I'd originally planned. So yeah, it was good to have sort of that timeline of bushfires through to COVID, and then that ultimate question of what now. And I guess we're sort of going through the next phase now with the floods and the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, and I guess to an extent you were documenting this time as it was still happening because of course the lockdown situation was in flux, as you said. You had some band members who couldn't come up. So as a storyteller, did it feel almost like you're inside the story and outside the story at the same time?
Yeah, definitely. It was probably an interesting time to record because, like you say, a lot of the lyrics were so relevant at the exact moment that I was singing them. So there was a lot of passion and a lot of emotion for me while I was singing in the booth in the recording studio, and yeah, it was just an emotional time. So I think we really captured that on tape, and yeah, I feel like it's one of my probably more mature recordings to date. So yeah, hopefully people are enjoying the upbeat songs as well as the quite sad ones as well.
I found that the songs were a mix of hopeful and practical, but there was also some quiet devastation, like on the song The Only Shirt I Own, which sounds like it could be a wryly funny song until you realize that the person you're talking about only has the one shirt because everything else has been destroyed. And so I did actually have a question about the emotions on the album, and I guess more whether you would try to consciously balance the emotions you had, or whether you just let all that flow as you were writing and singing.
Yeah, it's a great question. I wrote a lot of sad songs to start the album. and it was sort of getting to the point where I was going to just have people crying for 40 minutes if they listened to it. So I consciously sat down and started thinking about ways to get across that hopeful point of view and sort of get people to look forward to the future and the interesting things that are coming up. So I guess songs like What Now are super upbeat, and songs like Your Blue Eyes talk about, blossoming love that came out of the lockdown era and things like that. So I guess there's a sprinkle of hope in there amongst all the devastating themes as well.
Yeah, I think it's also a reminder that interpersonal connection's important, in the midst of all those terrible things that were going on and are still going on. People still want to make connections, whether they're romantic or otherwise. And so it is truthful to that experience to put those sorts of songs on there.
Yeah, definitely. It was a tough time for a lot of people the past few years. I guess when I was putting out some of these singles, it was in the middle of the 100-day lockdown in Greater Sydney. So I was sort of hoping that people would connect with a lot of those stories while they were in lockdown. And I put a few film clips out as well, just to, so people could connect with my music in a different way. Obviously not being able to tour the songs, it was great to connect with people online through social media. And it was great to get some feedback of what people were going through themselves in that time.
Your film clip for Some Days, which is the title track of your previous album, is one of my favorite music videos ever. And I think you had a hand in storyboarding that or coming up with the concept. So obviously video is something you're really interested in.
Yeah, it's a new ball game for me. I'd only previously done about 3 or 4 film clips with my previous band. So it's something that I've really dived into headlong this time, and I've tried to put a video out for each single that I've done. But yeah, I really do like the Some Days film clip. It's something that I put a lot of time into planning, and I had to find people that looked sort of similar to me at different ages, and I really wanted to do it in my hometown because it was, it's talking about Bega, where I grew up, and I wanted people that also grew up in Bega and were going through those stages in the song that I was talking about. So yeah, it was great to get the 2 young fellas involved, and we got some really lovely drone footage as well of some of my favorite local places on the far south coast too.
Yeah, great. And going back to the singles from your current album, even just releasing the album, I suppose all these lockdowns and changes had to be a consideration as to when you release things, whether you were going to at all. You said that you were going into recording around the time of the Sydney lockdown. So did you think about delaying, or did you delay the release of the album?
I think I just got super lucky with the release date of the album itself. I'd always planned to release it in March this year. So I guess I just fully went for it and planned the tour last year in the hope that by the time we got to March that all the lockdowns would be ended. But I did have to cancel a whole tour for the first single. I cancelled about 10 shows for that one. But I think the film clip was probably more successful because of it, because people couldn't come to the show, they ended up looking at the YouTube clip, and it was really cool, that one. We couldn't actually film it in person because there were limits on travel and who you could meet up with. So we used some home video footage for the first single, Cemetery Kids. And by the time we got to the second single, Love You and Leave You, I think we got most of the shows in on that tour. So we only cancelled 1 or 2, which was awesome.
Yeah, because I was expecting to see you play in Marrickville a few weeks ago, and it was when everyone in Sydney went into a self-imposed lockdown, so they just weren't going to gigs. But you are now back on the road and playing in a few locations, including the Tamworth Country Music Festival. So people should check your website, obviously, for those dates. Are you hoping to expand the tour to further flung parts of Australia once these current dates are over?
Yeah, I've been waiting for quite a while. I haven't really had a proper chance to tour with this project under my own name yet, so hoping to get to South Australia, some more Victorian shows, and up to Queensland later in the year. But yeah, at the moment I'm just focusing on New South Wales and Victoria, and we're at the halfway point of the album launch tour now, so we'll be going up the mid-north coast next week to Upper Lansdowne in Maitland, and then we've got some South Coast shows in Sydney as well. So looking forward to finishing the tour with a bang.
Yeah. Now, the album was produced by Matt Fell, but on your Instagram, I saw a photo of you with Michael Carpenter, who also works out of Love Hurt Studios. So does that mean when you're producing with Matt, you got to have Michael playing on the record too?
Well, I didn't actually meet Michael until I'd finished the album.
Oh.
Yeah, it was one of those weird things where we just never crossed paths, even though we were in the same building at different points. We were just, Matt Fell and I were just in such a headspace that we were smashing through as much as we could each day, and to the point where we barely even leave the room for 12 hours. So it was just, it was really full on, but a great experience with Matt. We got a lot of work done in a short period of time. We were just painfully aware of the fact that the lockdown could have gotten worse at any point. So I think we actually got 2 days from finishing, and we had to postpone it for 3 months. So I couldn't actually travel to Sydney for about 2 or 3 months, and I had to wait until I think it was November of last year to actually finish the album. So even though I was releasing singles, part of the album still wasn't finished at that point.
Just from a technical point of view, I'm curious, when you're doing a 12-hour day in the studio and you're singing songs that can be quite emotional, is it really hard to manage your energy levels so that you can keep recording vocals for that?
Yeah, definitely. It was quite a tough thing. I guess I sort of meticulously planned out which songs to sing first, so that I could naturally move through the day, and by the time I got to the last song, the way my voice was sounding would suit the song. My voice is naturally quite deep in the morning, so I always attempted the really deep, sort of slower songs in the morning, and then by the afternoon I just start belting out the rock songs. So yeah, I think Matt Fell said it was the second most vocal takes he'd ever seen in a single day.
Oh, I bet over that amount of time. Oh, that's interesting about your voice being deeper in the morning. So I wonder, maybe it's as you get tired, your range changes or something. So what does that mean when you're playing gigs at night? Do you have to do special exercises to try to access lower notes?
Yeah, I guess when I'm on tour and I'm playing night after night, it's a whole different ball game. I feel like quite often when I play at night and I've been playing for a few nights in a row, I generally just start to sing the verses higher anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I do struggle to hit the low notes live, so yeah, sometimes I just sing an octave above and just go for it.
Yeah, well, and I suppose also for you, it keeps it interesting because you're interpreting these songs as you go and adapting to the audience, perhaps.
Yeah, for sure. We played a few shows on the tour where you sort of get to the end of the night and everyone wants to get a bit rowdy, so I have to throw in a few rock songs where I have to really belt the words out. So yeah, it really does depend on the crowd. I probably preferred the shorter gigs where I can just pick and choose the ones that work best for my voice. But yeah, I guess now that everyone's able to dance again, you get a lot of people that want to get up on the dance floor and hear the more upbeat songs.
Yes, everyone's off the leash. It's amazing. Do you have any songs that you keep in reserve for those times when you think the crowd is rowdy and really wants to let go on the dance floor?
Yeah, we've got a few covers up our sleeve that we always chuck in. I'm a huge fan of AC/DC, so we've got 2 or 3 of those that we always keep right at the end of a covers gig.
Yeah, I'm sure they get people moving. Now, you received Create New South Wales funding for this album, and also you had a scholarship for some of your earlier music. I'm wondering what that support has meant to you as an artist, and perhaps it was particularly worthwhile or useful for you during lockdown.
Yeah, it was an amazing thing for me. I've been lucky with the Create New South Wales funding on 2 albums now, and I honestly don't think that I would have got to album 3 by now if I hadn't received that first funding from Create New South Wales. I've been in a band called the Swamp Stompers for 10 years, and we've done a lot of blues rock stuff in that time, and I really wanted to branch out and try the folk alt country scene.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to get that funding from Create New South Wales just meant that I could not worry about the financial side and just really focus on putting out a solid first album. And then since then, I've received funding from Create New South Wales for the third album. So again, it was just a chance for me to just really aim for the stars and try something that I wouldn't have normally tried, to be honest. I never really planned on doing a concept album until it happened, and to have that funding just meant that I could record with Matt Fell. You know, Matt's a professional producer that's super well known in the country scene, and obviously quite expensive, but very worthwhile to work with. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of teaching work to save up to pay for the rest of it as well. But yeah, obviously not being able to tour means that we can't really budget for much at the moment too. So yeah, it's been a godsend having the funding.
And you have, in fact, released albums at a pretty good clip. The first album was 2019. The second was 2020. You missed last year. How dare you? But as you said, you obviously plan to release this third album in March this year anyway. But that's quite a work rate just in terms of writing songs, let alone recording them. Yeah,
for sure. I had a plan in 2018 when I first decided to go out solo. I planned to put out 3 albums before the age of 30. So I've literally just hit the mark by 6 months. I turned 30 in August. So I've got the 3 albums out, and yeah, I think I'm just going to sit on this third album for a while and try and tour it as much as I can. And I'm not really pushing too hard to start writing the 4th album just yet.
Well, I think you got enough songs for a set list, more than enough songs for, in fact, several set lists. So you probably don't need any more at the moment. So you could keep touring this one. And you mentioned that you you were in the Swamp Stompers and wanted to branch out towards folk and alt country. Was that because you were listening to a lot of music in those genres and you were curious as to what that may mean for your own songwriting?
Yeah, for sure. I was listening to a lot of Chris Stapleton about 5 years ago. I was living up in Lismore, which just got massively affected by the floods. And yeah, while I was living and working there, I was really starting to get into a lot of country stuff and sort of the country side of the blues thing as well. I know that Chris Stapleton really blends the two well, and for me, it was a bit of a gateway into what I'm doing now. Yeah, prior to that, I listened to a lot of 70s blues rock and like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think it's almost come full circle for me, because when I was a kid, I listened to a bit of Casey Chambers and Keith Urban, and that was sort of the things that I was listening to when I first started. So yeah, it's nice to start writing in this genre now, and it's yeah, it's exciting. Looking forward, I'm hoping to keep writing in this style, but maybe start to reintroduce some blues stuff on the third album, on the 4th album.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be allowed to. What age did you start playing guitar? Because you are a highly proficient guitarist from everything I've seen.
Oh, thank you. I started when I was 8 years old, I think. So it would have been 2001 that I started.
Mm-hmm. And was that just because you liked the idea of the instrument, or because you wanted to be a rock star, maybe?
Well, I was a very hesitant musician when I first got started, because it was actually compulsory at school, so I didn't have a choice.
Right.
But I just got thrown in the deep end. I had a choice between recorder and guitar, and I actually went to the recorder group for about 20 minutes.
Shame.
And it sounds weird that my thought process as an 8-year-old was that my parents might think a guitar was too expensive. But I ended up jumping across, and I went, oh, guitar looks more interesting, and all my mates are in that group, so I'll go to that one instead, and the rest is history.
Guitar, having played both instruments myself, I think guitar is more complicated than recorder, but it certainly sounds nicer.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of social suicide playing the recorder, so I thought it might be a bit more interesting if my mate saw me play the guitar.
Yeah. So did you keep it up consistently from that age, or did you take a break at any point?
I don't think I've stopped since I first started. I think I've probably clocked up close to 1,000 gigs since that age. I remember playing the pubs when I was 12 years old, and I ended up playing alongside James Rain, James Blundell. I ended up supporting the Angels and Rose Tattoo when I left school, and I was sort of playing a lot of gigs through those years. And then obviously when I was old enough to drive myself around, I started playing even more shows. So it hasn't really stopped except for COVID.
How does one book a pub gig when one is 12 years of age? Did you just stroll in there and say, here's my demo, how about it?
I was very lucky to have supportive parents. My mum and dad drove me around everywhere, and they'd put the trailer on and load my brother's drum kit in the back. And mum would always ring up the pubs or email them and send a little demo CD in. So I was super lucky.
So what age did you start singing?
Would have been pretty early, I think 8 or 9. The same sort of thing. I got put into the school band at that age, and no one wanted to sing, and because I was so shy, I sort of just didn't volunteer, and then everyone said shot not, so I was the last one to say it, so they put me in as the singer.
So did you, because you said, you listened to a bit of Casey Chambers and Keith Urban when you were a child, but you obviously don't sing like either one of them. So in fact, you have very distinctively your own voice. But when you were that age, were you trying to sing like anyone else?
I always wanted to be Bon Scott.
Well, it's certainly a way to develop your muscles, I guess, on your voice, is to really belt it out, and hopefully belt it out from lower in your diaphragm or whatever, so you're not ruining your vocal cords. Yeah,
it's a very different way of singing. I can still pull it off for a few songs, but after 3 or 4, I just lose my voice now. So I sort of have to try and sing something a bit more mellow to fill out the sets these days.
So while you were having that enforced layoff over COVID, as every performing artist did you keep singing, keep practicing just to keep yourself match fit? Because I would imagine it takes a bit of ramping up to get back to what you're doing now.
Yeah, I tried to practice regularly and just learn new covers, and obviously a lot of writing in that time as well. But I think the thing that surprised me most was once I did get back on stage, I couldn't remember things like how to set up the pedal board for my guitars, and I'd hit the wrong switch and then the guitar would turn off, and little things like that you don't think to practice at home, and then you get to the gig and all of a sudden you got all these electronic issues and things that you don't plan for. So it's a bit of a baptism of fire getting back into it late last year, but I'm feeling super comfortable back on stage now.
And I guess what's interesting about that is that obviously the habit of doing all of that was not so ingrained in you that it was automatic, but you would think it would be after all those gigs. The brain is a strange thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I just bought a new guitar, and I think that was the biggest issue I had. That I've got a custom-made Cole Clark guitar, and it's the first one of its kind that they've built, and it's got all these volume and tone knobs and switches and things, and I had to learn the hard way how to use it on stage.
How many guitars do you normally have on stage with you for a gig?
Not as many as I used to. I only have 2 on stage at the moment, so 1 acoustic and 1 electric.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I dare say that'll change as we go along. I'd like to reintroduce the slide guitar at some point because it's on a lot of the records, and I love playing lap steel slide guitar, so I'll try and sneak it back into the live sets.
Well, I'm sure that the country music audience in particular would appreciate that. And if they want to see you lap steel or no, they can, as I mentioned earlier, go to your website and see where you're playing. I'm hoping to catch you soon on the road. Corey, it's been so interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Sophie. See you next time.
See you.